At the end of high school, I just said, no, actually, I want to make games. I think that's what I'm meant to be doing. This network you create, it's worth everything because the people, the connections you build, they will reap rewards later down the road. Sometimes if it's the right timing, you're like, okay, I'm going to join. I indeed published a game called Kindo. It's a game I made as a side project. I love my job and it's a passion for me. So if I'm focusing on something I'm interested in solving, I'm gonna lose track of time. Being a designer is about solving, interesting problems and offering. In the specifically for game design, it's about offering interesting problems to solve to players. Ideas are cheap, but making them into something that people enjoy playing is the secret as a designer. You can make games with anything. So find what works for you and learn from this and go to the next step.
Welcome to Still My Job, where we uncover the journeys behind the careers in the video game industry. I'm your host, Mark, and today we're joined by Paul, a UX and game designer with over 10 years of experience crafting interactive experiences for companies like NHL, Football Manager, Matchday, and many more. Paul, it's fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm super happy to be here, Mark.
I was wondering, how did you get into gaming? Could you share with us your path? Like, what did you study? Did it have to do something with gaming, or was it something that just you were working and then stumbled upon game design? How did that happen?
This is gonna sound very cliche, and I'm sorry in advance, but I was always that dreamy kid who had a million ideas, who was always inventing games for his friends. We are also always trying to even tweak games I felt were not working. Like we were playing Monopoly, and everyone is frustrated. I would be like, "Hey, what if we would play it like this?" And then at the end of high school, I just said, no, actually, I want to make games. I think that's what I'm meant to be doing. And luckily enough, one school in France just that year opened a post graduation from high school entry path into their program. And so straight out of high school, I managed to get in, and I started learning about game design. And this school was a program where you had an apprenticeship. So you were like 1 week in school, 3 weeks in an enterprise, a video game studio, if you could find an apprenticeship, which I managed to find. So I kind of lucked into a school and a video game studio straight out of high school as a baby without beard. I still had more hair. And that was mind-blowingly amazing. I just felt like, I belonged and I was where I was meant to be. And I just started from here at like 18. And then, 15 years later, now we are talking together. So
Nice. So straight out of high school, right even before college or university, you start working on the video game industry.
yeah.
It sounds like you might be really, really good at like learning everything by yourself, but I'm also pretty sure that you had some mentors in those first years. What did what did you learn from the first group of people that you work with? What did strike you the most?
The first really thing that I learned, again, I was an 18-year-old, right? Like you cannot get a higher imposter syndrome than coming into a room full of people who have shit. Like my mentor, and I still call him my mentor, and we still have a really strong relationship 15 years later. He shipped like the first Rayman games,
Wow.
and so like games I played growing up, and so just starting as a baby face designer who has everything to learn, working side by side with these people who had such an amazing track record and had worked on games I had played as a fan,
Yeah.
was an incredibly empowering experience because they would just like every conversation would have a nugget, of like wisdom, of game industry wisdom, of game design wisdom, of game production wisdom. So I just upskilled massively, and I would try to be in all their conversations, just listening in, absorbing all of that knowledge, and trying to ask, not too dumb questions, so I could go deeper and deeper and learn more. And most of these, I still have, a regular contact with them, and they like hired me for, their next ventures along the years. So the other thing I learned was, this network you create initially as a professional, it's worth, everything because the people, the connections you build, they will reap rewards later down the road when someone remembers that it was fun and cool to work with you, and they're building a new project, and they pick up the phone and they say, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I'm building this cool thing. Sometimes if it's the right timing, you're like, "Okay, I'm going to join." And that happened to me actually a bunch of times throughout my career. So I feel incredibly lucky that this network keeps, my career moving forward and forward. So
Yeah, I think the same about connections and network. Like every time that I had to look for a project, what I found that gives me better results is to connect with people that I've worked with, but not only that I work with, but that I had like a good feeling and good relationship. I also imagine that you work with a lot of different managers and leaders, and because now yourself you're at Matchday in a leadership position. I was thinking, what do you think makes a good leader?
I think there's different ways to be a leader. You can be a craft leader, like as we say, craft expert in the industry, and I call that leading from the front. Sorry for the military kind of metaphor, but you're leading from the front because you're actually doing. You're doing with the other doers, and you're showing how it should be done and how you do it and how you can teach others and help others do it faster, better, cheaper, whatever the thing you're trying to transmit. It's I call that leading from the front. You're doing the craft. And usually if you have a bunch of these peoples on the ground, it cross pollinates across disciplines, and everyone starts, trying to keep up with the pace and learn from each other and build better ways to work together, which, eventually results in better products, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so.
There's another way which is more, supportive, I would say, which is like what I call leading from the back. So you're not actually doing the same tasks day to day than other people are doing the craft, but you're providing them with the platform, the tools, the mindset that they can leverage to deliver a great experience all together.
Nice. So, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you successfully published your own game on the App Store. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, wow, it's a trip down memory lane. All right. I indeed published a game called Kindo, Kindo, in May 2015. So we're almost 10 years later now. It's a game I made as a side project. Initially started around 2010. I wanted to make an abstract strategy board game, and so I started porting that board game that I had working as a prototype, as a physical analog prototype. I ported it over to making an iOS app with a friend of mine, an engineer who helped me. And then, we started submitting it to different indie game festivals and going to different, conventions to show the game around. And it started gathering a bit of positive, buzz, so to speak. Um, and we decided to ship it on iOS on the App Store, which we took like, I don't know, a year and a half to make it happen on our, spare time, because we wanted the game to be really, really polished and to be able to be played in any context. One of the design principles I had with this game on the iOS app was that it should be completely agnostic of your context and work right out of the box. If you're watching a YouTube video on landscape on your phone and you go back in the game, it works in landscape. If you're playing with a friend on the other side of the table and you put your phone flat on the table, it works for both players side by side or face to face. And so we designed actually a very responsive way to manage the UI. So whatever the orientation of the phone or the iPad, the game would just work for you and your friends. Then we added AI and so on and so forth.
That's amazing. I think you also told me that there was even a small community.
Around 1,000 beta testers provided a wealth of feedback we integrated and we used to polish the game until its May 2015 release. And they actually helped us localize the game in 13 languages. So we shipped the game and we had like 13 different languages, including Japanese, simplified Chinese, Russian, and so on and so forth, just because people were like enjoying the game and wanted to translate it into their own languages, which was a super exciting experience. And we'll always be grateful to these people who helped us make that game a reality.
That's amazing. And what happened with the game? Is it still available, or how did it go?
The game is not on the App Store anymore because of iOS updates and the tech stack becoming deprecated. Mostly because like Apple updated Game Center to into GameKit, and we didn't update this because it created a lot of bugs in terms of matchmaking and so on and so forth. There is someone somewhere out in the world who, for a graduation computer science project, made playkindo.com. I don't know if it's still running, but it was an open source GitHub project that I stumbled upon by complete happenstance, and they actually made a live web version of the game as a
Wow,
graduation project. So I'm like incredibly thankful for this person to keeping the dream alive.
nice. That must have been such a huge learning experience. Like building and releasing your own game. That's insane. Is there a part of it that you like the most where, where you lose the notion of time, you look at your watch and then you suddenly realize you spent so much time working on something? What would be the best, like your favorite part of this process?
I love my job and it's a passion for me. So if I'm focusing on something I'm interested in solving, I'm gonna lose track of time. That's kind of a personal, I guess, trait. But talking about the job in general, what I'm really passionate about is this moment where you've built the scaffolding, like you've built the elements independently, the different features, the different mechanics and systems,
Hmm.
and moving from it works to it sings, it delights. That's the process I enjoyed the most.
This podcast, the goal of the podcast is to basically, for a kid that's watching this, give them like a blueprint of what they could do to get into the video game industry. And obviously, it's different now probably than when we started. And also, everyone has their own journey. But if you have a kid who's watching this and wants to become a lead on a big video game company, a design lead at a video game company, um, what tips would you give to him or to her?
So there's two. I think first, as you said, everyone has their own journey, and I think there's so many ways to be a game designer.
Yeah.
Being a designer is about solving, interesting problems and offering the specifically for game design, it's about offering interesting problems to solve to players. And I think you can be a game designer in so many ways nowadays. You can start, creating games with Scratch or Unity, or even board games with just a bunch of wooden tokens and paper and I think that's how I would start if I were to start over again. I would just, do the work, design games, throw them away, start over, and just build that muscle of ideas are cheap, but making them into something that people enjoy playing is the secret as a designer. And then as a leader, if I were to do it all over myself right now, I would invest so much more into coaching and being mentored by like people who know what they're talking about. Nowadays, we have so much content available to us that probably the hardest part would be pick the right content, pick the most high quality content that brings you the biggest leaps in knowledge and experience. But you still need to do the work. Get in there and design games and grow as a professional and among peers. See how you react when someone says, actually, that stuff you just spent like 3 weeks designing, we're going to throw it away because it's out of scope. Or actually, that thing you spent 2 months designing with the rest of the team, we're going to throw it away because it's not fun. This is the kind of stuff you have to go through as a leader, because when it's going to be your turn to say that to the team, you have to understand, that pain, as well as, why it matters that sometimes you have to do these kind of hard decisions and as a team to grow the project bring the project to a better place.
And considering your trajectory and how you started, do you think it makes sense for someone who's 17, 18 years old, finishing high school, to get into like formal education, university, yada yada? Or or would you recommend to do the same thing you did, like trying to get directly an internship at a video game company? What do you think?
I think there's so many ways that none of them should be disregarded as a bad way to go, but you have to find what works for you. If you're very academic, if you've like gone through high school loving doing homework and loving sitting in classrooms and such, that was not necessarily my style. So I think just going straight to work at the company was a better fit for me in the end. If I could do it all over again, I would do it the same way, because jumping straight into the industry was incredibly scary. You know, as again, as an 18-year-old, you feel like you don't belong here, you know nothing. But once, you know, you start doing the work and feeling that you're making a meaningful contribution and you're learning so much from hands-on experience, first-hand experience, it's incredibly worthwhile. And a lot of the traditional academic, let's say, knowledge you can gather from great books, great blogs, great YouTube channels nowadays. There's so many people making great content for you to upskill that it just takes, you know, again, the right mindset to find the right content for you to grow and just not like spread, you know, in all directions, because it can be very hard to focus with everything pulling for your attention. But if you find the right type of content, you can upskill yourself so much.
Yeah, it seems like it worked well for you. You're doing amazing, Paul. So
Thank you.
nice. So yeah, thank you so much, Paul. I think this was a great conversation, and I hope it's going to be useful for a lot of people who want to follow your steps. So thank you so much.
I I thought a lot about your concept, right? The how to steal my job.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think my job from 15 years ago is still there for the stealing.
Uh-huh.
I think there has been so many changes in the way games are made. So I guess it's about building your own job, being flexible, being a fast learner, quick on your feet, and testing stuff, you know. Just opening Figma to figure out what it's like and watching a few videos to understand, can I make a prototype of my idea with this? If not, can I make it with clay? Or, you know, can I make it with, I don't know, anything? You can make games with anything. So find what works for you and learn from this and go, you know, to the next step.
I think we can leave it here, and I hope we can maybe in the future have another episode.
Always. I'm always happy to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for doing this.
Thank you very much for having me.
Goodbye.
Bye.
To our viewers, we hope that today's episode gave you a deeper understanding of the craft behind UX and game design. See you in the next episode of Steal My Job. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.